So wintertime is coming, and we've had a summer of not being able to preserve very much food because we've had medical stuff going on in our family. We lost all of our garden, and I've had some other big projects happening for me that kept me out of the kitchen as much as I wanted. So what am I doing today? I'm starting my winter prep because it's time. So I'm going to show you the way that I do a quick and easy reset of my dry pantry with my dehydrator and get it stocked up as quickly as I can. And by the way, if we don't know each other, I'm Darcy from the Purposeful Pantry. I'd love to be your dehydrating BFF, where we learn all about safe and practical ways to dehydrate food to stock your pantry for whenever you need it.
So this is my tip in restocking my pantry pretty quickly. I use frozen foods because they're already prepped, diced, sliced, however it needs to be, blanched and ready for you just to open the bag and then pour it out onto a tray. So the tip I have right here is you can put this in where it's, don't pile it on, but you don't have to try to make space for each individual piece because they will all shrink during drying time. So you can just load your trays as you need to. So I did first the potatoes O'Brien, which is potatoes, red peppers, and green peppers, and I think onion. You always want to check the bag to see if there's a high oil content so that you don't have too much oil in your food, because then it's not reliably shelf stable for very long, but this one doesn't have any. So now I'm using a frozen soup mix that I get from my particular store, and it's got enough vegetables in it that make it great for doing soups or adding to casseroles or whatever. And so here I'm doing frozen onions. And the cool thing about doing these is they don't stink that much when you're drying them because the freezing process takes care of that. So I can just pour them out on trays, spread them out, and they're ready to go. Something that I do this for is to make meals in a jar season much easier for me. And especially this year, since I've made a change in how I eat for me personally, I want to have things at the ready to have a meal whenever I need it that's quick and easy for me to put together for just me. And I'm going to be relying a lot on soup mixes and things like that to get ready for that meals in a jar season. So something else I did was I went into my refrigerator and cleaned out a couple of vegetables that we weren't using. I'm doing a regular zucchini here, just shredding it up as much as I can and getting it ready to add onto a tray. Just like this. It's this easy to go ahead and just spread it out onto your tray. It's going to shrink up so much that you can also do a kind of thing where you're piling on because it will shrink up a whole lot. And then, for those who ask, can you dehydrate frozen zucchini? Yes, you can. And my fun tip is how it happened in my refrigerator. Our refrigerator tends to freeze things that are in the back of the shelves. And you can see here, I have a zucchini that got stuck in the back and it froze. So I'm simply shredding it and I'm going to put it on my trays and dry it. And something weird that happened with this is as I shredded, it pretty much peeled itself. The skin on it did not shred, so I had this leftover piece, which we gave the rabbit. So I'm going to go ahead and load this up onto my trays and get it ready to dry, just like everything else we've been working on. You do not have to thaw it. You don't have to do anything to it. Just spread it out and let it go. Now, if yours was really clumpy, you would want to let it thaw a little bit so that you could spread it out easily. So I'm placing all of my food into my dehydrator. I'm going to dry it at 125 F, 52C. It takes me a second here to remember what number it is because I still have it set on Celsius instead of Fahrenheit. And then I'm going to set the time out for a long time because I don't care about the time. It's going to take as long as it takes to dry. I check it after about 8 hours, then check it again a couple times if I need to. But I'm just setting my dehydrator out to go so I don't look at the time so much. So you can see here I have 2 trays of mixed vegetables, 3 trays of onions, and a tray of potatoes. Okay, apologizing for bad lighting because of the way that our garage is. And here is our stack of onions and the zucchini and then the frozen zucchini here on top. Yes, you can do frozen zucchini. You do not have to let it thaw, release its juice. Just let it dry in here. We're going to slip on our cover for the dehydrator. I'm going to set this at 125F, 52C, and let it go. So here's the result. Our potatoes, which you can see are dry and they have shrunk up a lot, and then it's just going to crush when I do this. Usually I let things cool off before I test them, because if they're still warm, the sugar inside are not going to be, they're still going to be pliable, and you don't know for sure how things are dry. But this has been over dried long enough that I don't have a problem taking care of it. So let's talk about storing. What I'm going to do now is start stocking up my jars for my pantry, because I want to make sure that things are really good and dry. And I'm just showing you what these look like once dried. So that's the frozen zucchini right there, and then the dried zucchini below. Then I have another tray of the extra onions. What I'm doing is taking my zucchini jar that I already have, and I'm topping it off with what I've got there on the trays. I could do a separate jar, I could do the same jar, I could put it into something else, but I'm going to go ahead and just top off my jar, and then I'll start another one in a minute. So what I'm doing behind here that you can't see because I've got the jars in the way is I'm taking my mesh and I'm rolling it in order to allow the zucchini to pop off of it so it's not all stuck. It doesn't stick the same way it would stick to the plastic tray on its own, but I do want to release all that food from the mesh so it makes it easier to pour in. So here what I'm doing is also vacuum sealing. You don't have to vacuum seal. That's totally up to you. If you've dried your food properly, you condition it for a week, you know it's good and dry, and you put it into a jar that's the right size for the volume of food you have, you do not have to vacuum seal. I'm finding myself doing it more and more often just to make sure that everything's good and done. But if you don't have a vacuum sealer, it's okay. I'll leave a link to the one that I have there down below in the description box if you want to check that out. And what I've done now is I've added my extra zucchini into my soup mix jar, because every little bit of vegetable in any of those soups help me out a lot. So here I've got the extra onions. I'm topping off my onion jar because I use this not only to put into meals, but I also will powder it for onion powder during the year. So I do this with onions pretty much primarily now. I don't ever dehydrate fresh onions unless I'm making caramelized onions, because this is so fast and easy for me to stock up quickly, and I can do it inside the house because the smell is not bad at all. Yes, it smells a little bit, but nothing like if you're doing fresh. So I'm pouring that last bit in, and then we'll get this one in line to go ahead and vacuum seal too. And if you don't, I don't know if you caught it, but when I put the vacuum sealer on the soup mix jar, I had forgotten to put the lid on. So it's sitting there vacuum sealing for no reason whatsoever. I didn't notice it until I went to go take off the lid, going, why is it running so long? Duh. And this is what onions should look like when they're dry and you crush them up. Here is just going ahead and putting my potatoes into a jar on their own. I would add them to the soup mix, but then I realized that sometimes we're going to want to use these for our breakfast. We're trying to do some higher protein, different breakfast to make eggs taste better. So having some hash browns there ready to go, we want to have those separate so that I can use them. But I'll be doing this same treatment with more frozen foods within the next few weeks, just constantly running my dehydrator all the time, taking every version of frozen vegetables that we eat and putting them in to get them dry to stock their shelves. So my soup mix is here, and what you'll start seeing me do is I am picking out all of the lima beans. I do not eat lima beans. Lima beans are pretty gross for me, and so I'm picking these out to make sure that they don't get stuck in my soup jar, because I don't want to eat them. And right there on the left, I've got a little jar that is ready to go for all of those things that I'm going to end up powdering later. I just have one little jar that's set up with any bits and bobs that go in there until we're ready to powder.
Okay, so what you can see is a day's worth, no, not even a day's worth, probably 20 whole minutes total on my time versus letting it sit for about, I let it sit for about 18 hours, just drying to make sure it's all good and dry when I need it in the morning. But I have my beginning of a stash of diced potatoes dehydrated, my zucchini filled back up, my soup mix filled back up, my onions filled back up. Then my second soup mix started because I usually try to keep 2 of these in the season. And then this is my what I typically call my junk jar, which is just whatever's going in there that's going to be powdered. Things that I know I'm not going to eat, like all those lima beans, you cannot make me eat those things. So that's where they are. And here is my stash of beginning for winter this season.